Next, board members will be moving to the items number 3, which is our Utah Schools for the Deaf and the Blind. So um, Superintendent Coleman and Finance Director Carl Empey, you guys are up. So we'll start first with 3.1, the monthly budget update. Finance Director Empey, are you prepared to report?
I am, Mr. Chair. Good morning to you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chairs, and board members. We've got a strong financial report for the first 6 months that ended December 31st of 2000. So we're halfway through our fiscal year. Our transfers and inflows of monies totaled, and I'm going to round up to 23.1 million. Our expenses totaled 19 million. So we had 4.1 million more in inflows than we did outflows. A lot of that is due to advances from the state office, for our transportation and for grants. So that amount will slowly dwindle down as we proceed through the rest of the fiscal year. Our number of students served, we've revised how we're reporting this back for the month of December to reflect, I think, more accurately the students that we reach out and interact with, and that totaled 2,304 students. Our enrichment fund balance at the end of December is in $1.5 million. Our donated funds were $267,000, and our educational foundation balance as of December 31st was $1,030,000. The report behind that, the budget status report, gives all the granular detail to support the numbers. The next report is the enrichment fund project list. Of the $1.6 million in projects that you approved, we've spent $319,000, leaving us with $128,000 remaining to spend throughout the rest of the year. And that is my financial report, Mr. Chair. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions or comments from board members on Mr. Empey's report, the information item? Board member Straight.
Yes, there was a comment about the 3% rule. I guess I'm not familiar with that. Could you expand on that?
Maybe I'll defer that one to Superintendent Coleman if I could.
Superintendent Coleman.
So the board has a rule that it used to be that USDB just served everyone in the state. But in about 2009, I think, just before I was elected to the State Board of Education, the state board passed a rule that stated that any district that had more than 3% of the total students in the state was responsible to provide its own services to for students who were deaf or blind. And of course, some of them actually contract with us to do it, or they hire their own service providers for that. A couple of years, well, it might have been last year, the year before last, we suggested, we had some of these larger districts that said, you know, we sure would like to be treated like the medium and the small districts and all the charter schools in the state and benefit from your services without having to pay for them. And so we suggested to the board that perhaps we allow districts to opt out of that 3% rule and subject to funding from the legislature. And subsequently, we did that. Actually, we went to the legislature and made a request, and the board did adjust that rule so they could opt out. Anyway, we went to the legislature and they said, well, we're not going to give you any extra funding for that. So, you know, essentially we're in the same place. We still have the 3% rule. And so I'm not quite sure where the comments from this morning came. We do have a couple of school districts that are right on the bubble. So they were just under 20,000 students, which is about the number of students that's 3% right now. I think it's 19,998 or something like that. So it looks like we have one district like Tooele who has just exceeded that. We've been serving them. And then we have another district, Salt Lake District, that is like 200 students over that. And they almost qualify for our services without being charged. But we haven't done anything official with the rule or anything. It's just that's kind of the situation, and that's what the 3% rule is right now.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from board members? Board member Cannon?
Thank you. As I was looking through the budget, I just wondered what exactly is meant by a dedicated credit. You have a 2% dedicated credit, and I tried to Google it. I couldn't figure anything out. I wonder if you could just explain dedicated credit to me.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that, Board Member Cannon. The dedicated credits are items in terms of the following categories: sale of goods or services, which are our canteen sales, and then our school contracts that Superintendent Coleman was just describing, of providing services to the districts that are above 3% of the population, any room or building rentals that we do, and miscellaneous revenues. So from the state's perspective, they categorize those as a dedicated credit. So they're funds that come in that we then use to offset the expenses of providing those services.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, board member Belknap.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Carl, I'm interested in some of the donated money. I know there's some restrictions on that. Is there any chance that some of that can be used for capital?
No. What we basically have, remember, Vice Chair Belknap, is our carry forward funds at the end of the year. If we've got more inflows than we do expenses, we dedicate those funds for construction projects and capital projects. We did just recently have a chance to buy some land, or had an opportunity to buy some land adjacent to our Salt Lake campus. And we had a timing issue between when the offer was made and when the legislature was going to meet. So we went to the foundation and asked the foundation if we could use some of those funds, with the anticipation that we would receive reimbursement from the legislature if we were able to acquire the land. Subsequent to the offer that we made on the land, we were outbid, and so that didn't go through. So we did not use any of the foundation proceeds.
Thank you. Follow up, Chair?
Yes, follow up.
Thank you. It's actually kind of a different question. So Carl, thank you for that clarity. So Superintendent Coleman, can you tell me why there's some angst and rub from some districts on this 3%? The statements that I have heard is that with that 3%, some of the districts are eliminating their programs to use USDB when they've had great programs running.
The pushback that we received a couple of years ago when we offered, it didn't actually dictate anything to the districts, but it allowed them to have the option of using our services without contracting. The pushback that we received was mainly from teachers of the blind who worked for other districts who did not want to become employees of USDB if that district chose to use USDB services and not spend their own special education funding on that. And they liked where they were, and they did not want to. For example, if Nebo district was one of them, where we heard from their TVIs, their superintendent told me that their TVIs were not happy about that. And so that was the concern of the individual employees, is they just perceived that USDB would be an inferior employer to their current employer. So that's the only pushback we received at the time. And so I would assume that's something that spurred the comment this morning. No one has come and talked to us about it, but I don't know. There may be some good reasons to look at adjusting the 3% rule slightly with these districts that are on the bubble going back and forth, but we don't have any plans to do any hostile takeovers of districts or anything like that. We just kind of want to look at the business case all the time and see what makes sense. It might be problematic if you have a district that one year, just because of a couple hundred kids fluctuating, if they become eligible for our services and they use them, and then it goes down or up and they have to go back and hire, or same with us, if we have to all of a sudden hire new people and we're switching employees back and forth, that doesn't make sense. But in fact, what I'll do is I'll give an analysis in our next meeting. I'll bring this as an agenda item and we can look at all the districts in the state and just what the numbers are so that board members know an overview of how the 3% rule actually affects the districts in the state, if that would be helpful.
Good, Chair, through the chair. Could you also, I'm just wondering if the pay's the same, and also this movement back and forth. If I ran a district, I definitely want to use USDB because I don't have to use my special education funds, which is disconcerting to people who have been in a program that's working well in a district, and then they, not that it is, but it feels like a hostile takeover. But I'm just wondering what job security they have, if the pay's the same, what ramifications for these educators have we created by this rule? So thank you.
Well, yeah, and our intention before was if some employees switched over to us, then we would just hold them harmless on their salaries, and state benefits are pretty good. There might be other districts that are better, but some of the fears that they expressed were that the benefits would not be as good and so forth. So I honestly don't blame any individual from thinking, oh, how's this going to affect my job? That's a very reasonable concern. And so that's kind of ancient history as far as it was a couple years ago, and we sort of passed that, but I'll bring an analysis so that the board members can actually see where the districts fall in the 3% and what.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent.
Gotcha.
Vice Chair Davis.
You may answer this when you bring your presentation back to us. I think probably everyone else gets this from me, but I missed it somewhere along the way. Did you say that a couple of years ago it was not funded, but now it is funded? And so we are currently having some districts participate this, or it has never been funded and no districts are participating in the opt-in?
Well, yeah. So a couple of years ago, the board did change its rule to say districts could opt out and USDB can serve the districts that are bigger. And so we went to the legislature and said, well, here are I think there were 3 districts that asked us to do so. And we went to one of our IFRs for the legislature that year was, these districts would like to have our services like other districts. Here's how much it'll cost to increase our budget and assume the personnel that they have to continue serving the kids. And a couple of those districts needed more personnel. They were underserving students at the time. And part of the selling point for us was, all of a sudden, this removes any financial concerns from the districts on how much they can serve kids, and they can focus truly on what their needs are. And the legislature said, we don't really want to shift that funding from the districts to the state. Let's just not approve that one. So although they're still allowed to opt out, the legislature has not been willing to fund the cost of doing that to give that money to USDB to take over the services.
Chair, may I ask a follow-up?
You bet.
I'll be quick. And sorry, are we seeking that funding this year?
No, we just dropped it at that time, and we haven't done anything with it. We just figured that was our answer, and we tried, but status quo for now.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Well, we're looking forward to your report next week. Director Empey, do you have more to present?
I don't, Mr. Chair. That's my financial report.
Okay, thank you. I thought you were concluded, that you finished, but I didn't know if you had anything else to share. That's all I could see on the screens, and so thank you. Not seeing any other board members' questions or comments. Next, let's go to 3.2, USDB's fiscal year 22 legislative request. Superintendent Coleman. This is an information item.
Thank you. Yes, I know we've already talked about our requests. I just wanted to share with the board our PowerPoint presentation, the actual slide deck, so you have it in one convenient place. And so that was included in your packet. These are the slides that I used a week ago when we presented to the Public Education Appropriations Committee. It has a short overview of USDB. I knew there were a few legislators that were new on the Public Ed Appropriations Subcommittee because we just recently had an election in the fall. And so it gave them a little update to get them up to speed. And then at the end of that presentation, I used the 4-quadrant charts that sort of describe each of our funding requests. One of them was not actually a funding request. It was just authorization, which is required from State Fleet by the legislature to let us buy the bus and the audiology van we described earlier in the year with you, and they've done that. So anyway, that's more of just an informational item so that you have everything in one place for USDB if you need it, and that was our presentation. And I didn't anticipate any questions, but it's a good time if you still have any. We're happy to answer those.
And I appreciate this information. It's good to refer back to and know what's going on here. I'm not seeing any questions or comments from board members on this. So thank you.
All right.
Next, we have, this is an actionable item, the LEA license for board approval. We have Assistant Superintendent Michelle Tanner. Are you ready to join us?
Hello. Yes, I believe this is part of the requirement. We have another individual that we've just hired that needs to be approved as an LEA for an LEA specific license. If you pull that up, we just hired her. To replace someone who retired mid-year. She's in the process of working towards her education credentials, but is not fully licensed yet, which is a licensing issue that those of you who are new to the board, we can update you on that later. We have struggles finding qualified teachers of the deaf, and we've had some issues that have made it difficult to make that happen. So this is someone we've hired on an LEA specific license and just seeking your approval for that individual.
Okay, board member Lear.
I have a question, if it's okay, to
Yes.
Ms. Tanner. I don't know if it's Director Tanner or I want to be appropriate, but
Assistant Superintendent.
Assistant to Superintendent Tanner.
Yes.
Michelle, will you please enlighten me about what's your process for training or preparing LEA specific teachers? Do you have a policy? Do you have a series of training modules? What's your practice for doing that?
Oh, I appreciate the ask. So yes, we have been very robust in the request that the board put together to have training be given to anyone who is seeking or getting an LEA specific license and those with an associate license. So we have prepared in modules that are specific, that are outlined in code, one for educator licensure, meaning educator standards, that one for classroom management, and another for special ed, and of course ethics. Ethics seems to be the simplest one to quickly teach. However, the rest of them take an extensive amount of time, especially since we are fully working with students that are on IEPs all the time. So that's very important. So we've been more robust in that piece of the requirement. We've had all these individuals attending weekly trainings. We are rotating through the subjects, so they're not just focusing just on classroom management and then just on educator standards and then just on special ed for certain sections. We rotate them every week. So they have a week of training on each of those topics, and then we have a 1 week that we do follow-up They take an hour and a half on Fridays, and we have different people coordinating that, and we have different presenters who bring presentations on that. And I have the honor of leading the ones on the special ed. So we have content in Canvas, and we also have our information that we present with the group, so they have an opportunity to learn and participate. I think it's a great idea that the board did that. I think it was something we were already preparing, and then you put in to code that, or into board rule, that would have to happen. And so that has been blended very well for us at USDB.
You have a
Just a
follow-up?
short follow-up, yes. So Michelle, is there a policy, a USDB policy, or that I could look at that would sort of just summarize that?
Yes,
You know-
we, I think we shared that policy the first time we asked for all the list of all the other LEA specifics. I think a few months ago, I think it was in October. I'd be happy to reshare that with the rest of the board again.
Right, and maybe everyone's not interested, but I'd just love to know the policy number, and then I can look it up and see how accessible it is. Thank you so much.
I will be happy to share that with you.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised at this time. Board members, that if what I'd be doing is seeking a motion that the board approve the LEA license as proposed. Does the board member want to make a motion?
So moved.
Was that Vice Chair Davis? I'm looking for, I didn't see who moved on the screen.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second,
Ruth, second.
board member Scraid.
Okay, we've got some seconds there. Any discussion to the motion? Motion before the board is that the board approve the LEA license as proposed. So board members at this time, please vote. And if I remember right, we have to go to our reactions. I've been scanning these, and I'm seeing all green. Vice Chair Belknap, are you seeing the same?
I did see the same. I know some have come down, but it was unanimous,
I
Chair.
see the hands raised on the other devices.
Chair Huntsman,
Yes,
I believe Jim Moss is lower down on the list. I'm wondering if he could rename to put the district number first so that we can see him on the list.
that would be great. Board Member Moss, can you put your district number in and then it will pop up further? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, thank you. Next we have, and it's information item, Superintendent Coleman on our LIS Innovation Study Tour.
Thank you. This is an opportunity, just informationally, I wanted to let you know about that USDB will be engaged in over the next 18 months or so. As a member of the League of Innovative Schools, we have access once in a while to special opportunities. And a couple months ago, we received an email saying there are some, the League had been invited to have 10 districts. There are about 100 districts in the League. The League had been invited to choose 10 of its districts to participate in an international workshop doing a deep dive into social emotional learning and some innovative practices that have been happening in conjunction with some school districts in Canada and New Zealand. And it was sponsored by something called the Asia Society. And so it's really kind of a global education grant from them in order to do this. And so I sent back an email saying, sure, throw our hat in the ring. We'd be interested in it. The only cost to us is a one-time fee of $800, but that includes all of the workshops for 18 months, and it culminates next year with a trip actually to New Zealand to visit in person some of the schools and see firsthand what they've been doing down there. We've already had, the good news is we were chosen. We're the only special school. The other districts are all traditional school districts from across the country. And we've already had some workshops with the Surrey School District in British Columbia that I understand was, I just saw a chat from board member Moss that was his favorite area as a missionary. Is that right, Jim? That's good to know. They seem like very nice people there. And so anyway, they have really done amazing work in evaluating, we give a lot of lip service to personalized education or flexible learning and being student-centered throughout our education system these days. What they've done in some of these places is they've actually elevated well-being and student health, including social and emotional health, to the same level of importance as the academic learning. And anyway, so what I've seen there is that they tend to really take that seriously, and it's helped them tremendously focus on the students' needs during this COVID pandemic and just during regular times as well. So we were accepted, and I thought I'd let you know. I included the in your packet the description of the program. You can see the outline, and it really investigates a lot of different social emotional learning frameworks. There is not just one framework for this, and it is adaptable to any school district or school of its own. It means a lot of different things to a lot of people, like many terms in education do. And so we're going to get into this, and I'd like to bring the board along on the journey with us and just share things that we've been learning from time to time, so that you'll be aware of what we're doing and what our discussions are, and that we can get meaningful input and feedback and guidance from you as we go forward. So that's what that's all about, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay. Board member Moss.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment and perhaps a question for further explanation after this is done. I did spend 7 months in Surrey, British Columbia. It's not an area you hear a lot about. It's not the spectacular views of Vancouver proper or the north side of Vancouver. It's a heavily, a population with a heavy immigrant component. And as I read in and I saw this item, I read into what they were doing, and I think they're doing, it was then, I think it's even grown in that proportion of the population. So I'm very interested to hear what they're doing to serve those communities and how we might learn from it here.
Superintendent.
Thank you. That's we're excited too, and I figure we can always just improve, do better, and learn from others who are charting the path ahead of us. And so I'm excited to see what we learn in the next year and a half.
Vice Chair Davis.
Well, two things, but one, I was trying to hurry and raise my hand after your last presentation, so I'm going to dovetail them in because I think it fits here too. But I just, Chair had said, does anyone have any questions or comments about your presentation? And I just want you to know that I had also watched that presentation to PEA. And there was one slide you included that I really appreciated because it listed, about 10 of the things that you are doing, and some of them really innovative and thinking outside the box of how do we take resources here at USDB and make a difference for teachers throughout the country. So I appreciate this this presentation as well. But on the the emotional component, I still remember when you or your staff actually did a presentation to us a couple of years ago and talked about the rates of abuse for our deaf students and our blind students, and over the years how very much higher they were than our other students. And I was in the back of the room. I couldn't even go back up to my seat. I had to stay back there and kind of pull it together after that presentation. And I kept thinking, what are we doing to help these kids with resilience and to know they're strong and powerful, people. And so I appreciate you doing this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Moss, your hand's still raised. Did you have another question? Okay. All right, well, Superintendent Coleman, thank you. We're looking forward to more information as this progresses.
Looks
Next, we'll go to our mid-year professional development. This is information, recharge event.
yeah.
Is that what's next?
Yes, it is. This was something I wanted to share with the board because it was so fantastic. And I'm actually going to let the associate superintendent speak to it. They pulled off a mid-year recharge for our educators a couple weeks ago, and it was just so fantastic that I'd like them just to describe the experience they had so the board could be aware of kind of what's going on culturally in our efforts to keep all of our people up during this time. Of course, mid-year is challenging anyway on a normal school year, but it was just so great. We got good feedback. And so Susan and Michelle, if you wouldn't mind just taking a minute and sharing with the board what happened.
And if they would briefly reintroduce themselves so the new board members know who they are.
Well, so I'll go first. I'm Susan Patton, and I am the Associate Superintendent for the School for the Blind. And I am really happy to report. We did a survey. We knew that the emotional stress of our teachers, they were on a breaking point, and we had heard anecdotal comments and information that they were struggling. So we thought, well, you know what? Let's do something that's really special, and like a mid-year recharge. And so we recruited and were able to obtain Matt Townsend to take that piece and run with it. And he did a fantastic job. But one of the things that Michelle and I really wanted is we really wanted to pinpoint the hardships that they're experienced, the emotional stress. And so we were able to send out a survey, and we were shocked at what we got back. We got some of them were on their breaking point to the point where they were thinking about self-harm and things. And so we took that extremely serious. So we developed a professional development day where the morning consisted of a keynote speaker, which was Matt Townsend, and he just did a fantastic job in helping them understand their emotions and also being able to focus on positives, but then also being able to accept when they're having a negative feeling that it's okay to tell somebody that you're having a hard time. Then in the afternoon, we stayed combined as far as the School for the Deaf and the School for the Blind, but we offered breakout sessions in between both of our schools, and they were able to choose. They were able to choose between we actually had 6 breakout sessions, and I want to say that we had, Michelle can comment, but we had several breakout sessions. And in the very end, Michelle and I, was a question answer. That was one of the breakout sessions where we could they could ask us questions in regards to COVID issues or vaccination issues. And we were happy to, it was just an open discussion, and we were happy to do that. So I'll turn it to Michelle.
Susan is a delight to work with. I am Michelle Tanner. I am the Associate Superintendent of the Deaf here at USDB. And I just echo everything she said. We care very deeply, first and foremost, about the children and their social and emotional health. It is always at the forefront of anything we're thinking about. And it's always at the forefront when we're thinking about our teachers, because if the teachers are stressed out, that's going to be reflected in how the students are behaving. So we're excited that we had the opportunity to bring in presenters that address that issue. It was a delight. We did it virtually. And so one of the comments that we've had as we've done a follow-up survey is one of the teachers, as she watched, she was on screen, and she is quite the character, but she was in her little, I think it's a little swimming tub. I don't know what it is. She had a swimming suit on, but she was just watching from her swimming pool and watching, and everybody just laughed. And we had beanies that kind of helped unify us. And we are very concerned. So we're excited. We don't have an opportunity right now to hold and touch and let people know how much we care. I've seen that billboard that talks about, that shows a picture of people holding hands and said, this is an image of suicide prevention. And so we want to prevent that. We want to make sure everybody's happy and know that they're cared and valued and loved. And we took the opportunity to make that flexible, easy, and to enjoy where they're at and to be able to learn and grow and hopefully ease some of those tensions.
Okay. Any questions or comments from board members? I think it's really important for you to share this as an information item that I say this quite often, that we need to assess, especially going through this pandemic, and adjust ourselves, and your mid-year professional development event, recharge event definitely was that, is assess and adjust yourself or make those adjustments. So thank you for sharing and your work of making it happen. I'm not seeing any other questions, so thank you. Next, we have the superintendent's report. Superintendent Coleman.
Okay, so we've already covered most of what I wanted to cover. Just to wrap up that last item, I thought I would just say, in addition to this event, DHRM, who has served USDB very, very well over the past several years, they have actually, under our direction, they've reached out to remind employees of the resources that they have individually too, if they need help. And I think we've really created a place where they can say that their employer cares about them and that they feel supported in every way, no matter where they are on the spectrum of mental, emotional, social health. And even the two associates even created breakouts during sessions that were called hallway breakouts. And so like if you were at a regular conference where you kind of go out in the hallway and chat with your friends for a few minutes, they could even do that virtually. And it was just awesome. The last two items that I have is a superintendent report. One of them is just to report that we recently completed our UPIPS indicator visit, and the exact language we received was, we reviewed your files and you were found to be 100% compliant, and the data will be reported to the Office of Special Ed Programs in the annual performance report. So that's great. We always love to have that. And it's, you know, it's like any audit where you never know if you're going to have a material finding or a non-material or anything at all. So 100% is good news. And the last item I wanted to share with you is just to let you know that today or tomorrow, this week, we will be launching a new tool in part of our ongoing efforts to always improve communications, which was a specific assignment by the board to me a couple years ago in my personal evaluation. We're launching a tool called Parent Square, and we went through a couple of different not RFPs, this is on a state contract, but a couple different vendors, and looked at what we can do. It's actually an app that will be used to facilitate all communications throughout the school with parents, with staff members and everything. And it's a pretty exciting thing because now we use a hodgepodge of phone calls, texting, email, and everything. And so this will be sort of an app that other schools and districts that have used these types of tools have literally increased parental engagement by like 64% was an average of what we saw. And so we'll be reporting more to you as that rolls out. We're just going to launch it this week, and we'll let you know how it goes. And that is the end of my superintendent's report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Superintendent. Any questions or comments for the superintendent at this time? I'm not seeing any hands raised. Thank you, Superintendent and USDB staff for your presentation, and also keeping us informed of your activities and stuff via email. So thank you.
Thank you.
Take care and be safe. You're welcome to stay also if